What happens when a woman's hidden past resurfaces, threatening everything she holds dear? A truth so shocking that it could tear apart her family and her future. Will she survive the storm that's coming for her, or will her darkest secret destroy everything? As danger closes in, watch as she races against time to protect those she loves. The stakes are higher than ever, and there's no turning back. But in the end, will love be enough to save her? Don't miss this heart-stopping, suspenseful journey. Stick with us till the end and see how this unforgettable story unfolds. And if you want more stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat, make sure to subscribe right now. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. Hit that subscribe button and join our community for even more thrilling, emotional tales that will leave you speechless. The police dog kept barking at the pregnant woman nonstop. Everyone around her watched in confusion. The woman stood in the middle of the street, her eyes filled with fear. Her body trembled from the constant barking. She tried to step aside, but it was in vain. The dog continued to bark relentlessly. 30 minutes passed, and it felt as though time had slowed down. The barking grew louder, and people began to gathering the courage to approach. The woman felt as if the world around her was starting to twist and bend. Finally, the hidden truth began to reveal itself. The police dog, barking without stopping, was following its orders. It had caught a scent from her. And then everyone started to see it. In the woman's bag, there was a small pouch that she had never opened. Suddenly, one of the officers reached out and grabbed the pouch. As he opened it, what was inside shocked everyone. Inside the bag were items related to a case that had been missing for years. Everyone stood still as the woman turned to look at them, her eyes unable to express what she was feeling. The barking of the dog stopped immediately. But the discovery left the atmosphere around them thick with silence. The atmosphere was thick with tension as everyone stood frozen, their eyes fixed on the woman. The world seemed to stand still for a moment, suspended in time. The pregnant woman's heart was racing in her chest, her breath shallow, as though she could barely inhale the air around her. Her hands trembled slightly, but she clenched them into fists, trying to regain some sense of control. The weight of the truth was now pressing down on her, suffocating her, but she could do nothing to stop it. The police officer who had opened the bag stood there, staring down at the evidence, his expression unreadable. His colleagues, still shocked by the scene, exchanged uneasy glances. They had been called here for something simple, a routine patrol, but this was anything but routine. The discovery in that small, unassuming bag had shaken them all to their core. The woman's eyes flickered briefly to the dog, the one that had been barking relentlessly. There had been no warning, no reason she could comprehend for why it had singled her out. But now, in that moment, it made sense. The dog had known something all along. It had smelled the hidden truth in the folds of her belongings, something she had hoped would stay buried forever. She felt the warmth of the sun on her face, but it didn't come for her. The heat seemed to amplify the pressure in her chest, the weight of her secret that was now exposed for all to see. Her lips parted, but no words came out. What could she say? What could she possibly say to explain what had been hidden for so long? A hush fell over the crowd. The only sound that could be heard was the rhythmic thud of her heartbeat in her ears. She felt her legs weaken, as though they might give way beneath her at any moment. The voices around her were muffled, distant, as if she were underwater. She felt detached from the world around her, unable to comprehend how things had spiraled so out of control. The officer who had opened the bag took a step forward, his face stern, yet there was something in his eyes, a flicker of pity, maybe even regret. He hadn't expected to uncover this. None of them had. They had simply been doing their job, and yet, in an instant, everything had changed. He held up the contents of the bag, the evidence now laid bare for all to see. It was a photograph that had been carefully hidden for years. In it, the woman was standing beside a man she clearly knew, but it wasn't just any man. This man was one of the most wanted criminals in the city, a fugitive who had been on the run for years. And there she was, smiling beside him, her arm wrapped around his waist, her face glowing with happiness. The crowd gasped collectively. Some whispered, Some stared in disbelief, while others simply stood frozen, unsure of how to react. The officer's voice broke the silence, cold and stern. "We need an explanation. Now." The words hung in the air like a threat. The woman's chest tightened as she felt every single eye on her, waiting for an answer, demanding the truth. The truth she had spent years running from, the truth she had buried deep inside her, hoping it would never resurface. But here it was, laid out for everyone to see. She swallowed hard, her throat dry, and finally, she spoke. Her voice was soft at first, trembling, but the more she spoke, the stronger it became. "I never wanted anyone to know," she began, her voice cracking. "I never wanted this to come out. Not like this. Not now." The words were raw, filled with years of pain, regret, and guilt. She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself as she began to explain the impossible truth. The man in the photograph, he was her brother. Her estranged brother, who had disappeared many years ago. They had been close once, inseparable. But after a tragic event that tore their family apart, he had vanished, leaving nothing behind but questions. The family had presumed him dead, but in reality, he had gone into hiding, becoming a criminal, someone who would do anything to escape the past. And then, she had become pregnant. Her eyes clouded with emotion as she recalled the years that had followed. Her brother's disappearance had left her broken, lost. She had tried to move on, to live a life that could be normal, but the pain of his absence never truly left. She had met someone, fallen in love, and thought she could have a family. But the truth was that her life had been built on a lie that she had kept hidden, even from herself. The father of her child, the man she had married, had known nothing about her past. She had kept it all buried, thinking that the secrets of her family's history were something she could leave behind. But now, as she stood in front of the police and the crowd, she knew there was no escaping it. The truth had come crashing down, and there was no hiding from it anymore. The woman's body began to tremble as she spoke, the weight of her words taking their toll. The sun seemed to set faster now, the sky growing darker, as though the world itself was mourning the truth that had just been revealed. She wanted to disappear, to vanish into the shadows and never face the consequences of her actions. But there was no escaping it now. The officer didn't say anything more, but his eyes lingered on her, heavy with the weight of her confession. He seemed to understand, or maybe he didn't. Maybe he couldn't comprehend what she had just said, what she had been through. No one could. The pregnant woman's mind was racing, spinning in a whirlwind of emotions. She had spent years running from the truth, but now it was here, inescapable. The child inside her moved, a gentle kick that felt like a reminder of the life she was about to bring into the world. How could she protect this child from the past that haunted her? How could she give her baby the future it deserved when her own life had been built on secrets and lies? As the officer signaled for others to take the evidence, he nodded toward her. "You're free to go for now," he said, his voice softer now, almost understanding. "But this isn't over." And with those words, the pregnant woman turned and walked away, her heart heavy with the truth that had finally been revealed. The crowd watched in silence as she disappeared into the distance, unsure of what to make of what had just transpired. All they knew was that nothing would ever be the same again. The secrets that had been hidden for so long had been brought into the light, and now, there would be no turning back. The woman walked away slowly, her steps heavy and uncertain. Each movement felt like it was pulling her deeper into a world she could no longer control. The sun was setting, casting long shadows over the streets, as though the earth itself was mourning her fate. Her heart was pounding, each beat a painful reminder of the life she had tried to leave behind. The truth had been revealed, and there was no escaping it now. She kept her head down, unable to look anyone in the eyes. The whispers from the crowd echoed in her ears, but they felt distant, like they were coming from another world. All she could hear was the sound of her own breathing, shallow and ragged, as if her chest might collapse at any moment. The weight of what she had just admitted felt unbearable, and yet, there was still so much more to face. She had barely taken a few steps when she felt a hand on her shoulder. Her body tensed, her heart skipped a beat, but when she turned, it was just one of the officers, the one who had opened the bag. His face was softer now, his stern expression replaced with a hint of sympathy. But the sympathy didn't help. It only made the truth hurt more. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice low and gentle. The woman shook her head, unable to find the words to answer him. How could she explain what she was feeling? How could she put into words the turmoil that was twisting inside her chest? She had just told the world a secret so deep, so painful, that it felt as though the ground beneath her feet had been pulled away. Everything she had built, everything she had tried to protect, was slipping through her fingers. The officer didn't press her further. Instead, he stepped closer, his voice almost a whisper. "You're not alone in this. We'll help you. We can figure this out." But her mind wasn't on what he was saying. It was on the truth she had just revealed, the past she had buried so deep. She couldn't help but think of her family, the people who would never look at her the same way again. Her parents, who had lost their son years ago, would never understand how she had kept it a secret for so long. And then there was her husband, the man who had loved her, the man who had no idea about the darkness hiding in her past. What would he think of her now? How could she face him? Tears welled up in her eyes, but she blinked them away. She couldn't afford to break down, not yet. Not when the world was still spinning out of control. She had to keep moving forward, no matter how painful it was. But her mind kept going back to that photograph. The image of her and her brother, smiling, as if nothing had ever gone wrong. The life they had once shared, the love they had once had for each other, all shattered by the choices they had made. The officer seemed to sense her distress. "You don't have to face this alone," he said again, his voice firm but kind. "You have a chance to make things right." But how could she make things right? How could she repair the damage that had been done, the lives that had been ruined? She had spent so many years running from her past, trying to hide from the truth, and now it had come crashing down around her. As she walked away, the officer fell back, allowing her the space she so desperately needed. The street was eerily quiet, the usual sounds of the city muted by the weight of the moment. She could feel the eyes of strangers on her, feel the judgment in the air, but she didn't dare look up. Her heart felt as though it was breaking into 1,000 pieces, each shard a reminder of the guilt that had been eating away at her for years. She walked for what seemed like hours, but in reality, it was only a few minutes before she found herself standing at the edge of the park, the familiar space where she used to come to clear her mind. It seemed so distant now, so far removed from the chaos she had just experienced. The quiet of the park should have been soothing, but all she could feel was the storm raging inside her. Taking a deep breath, she sat down on a bench, the cold metal pressing against her skin. She wrapped her arms around herself, trying to find some semblance of comfort in the emptiness. The cool evening air brushed against her face, but it did nothing to calm the fire inside her. Her thoughts were like a whirlwind, spinning faster and faster, each memory more painful than the last. She thought about her brother. She thought about the man who had once been her everything, the one person she had trusted above all others. And now he was gone, lost to a life of crime and betrayal. She thought about the things he had done, the choices he had made that had ruined everything. And yet, in her heart, she couldn't help but wonder, had it all been her fault? Had her silence, her refusal to face the truth, allowed him to spiral out of control? The thought sent a sharp pain through her chest, and for a moment, she thought she might suffocate under the weight of it all. The tears she had been holding back finally fell, but they weren't the tears of guilt or regret. They were tears of helplessness, of sorrow for the life that could have been, but never was. She didn't know how long she sat there, lost in her own thoughts, when she felt a presence beside her. She looked up, startled, and saw a familiar face, her husband. He had been looking for her, no doubt, but how had he found her here? He sat down next to her, his eyes filled with concern, but also something else, a kind of understanding that she hadn't expected. His hand gently brushed against hers, and for the first time that day, She felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, there was a way to make things right. But then he spoke, and the words sent a chill through her. "I know about your brother," he said quietly. "I know what happened." She felt her heart drop. How much did he know? What had he been told? What had she hidden from him all these years? His voice was steady, but there was a sadness in his eyes that she couldn't ignore. "I don't blame you," he continued. "But I need you to tell me everything. I need to know the truth." Her chest tightened again. She had hoped to shield him from the past, to protect him from the mess she had made of her life. But now, the truth was out, and there was no escaping it. The silence between them was suffocating, but in that moment, she knew that if she didn't tell him the whole story, there would be no way forward. She had spent so long hiding, so long running from the truth, that it was time to face it, no matter how much it hurt. With trembling hands, she took his in hers. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Let me explain everything." And so, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the world in darkness, she began to speak, not just to him, but to herself, to the child inside her, to the memory of her brother, and to the future she had yet to face. She spoke of the past, of the choices she had made, of the life she had buried deep within her. And as the words left her lips, it felt as though the weight of the world was lifting, just a little. Her words trembled as they escaped her lips, like a dam finally breaking after years of pressure. She didn't know where to begin, how to unravel the tangled mess of emotions and memories that had been suffocating her for so long. But she had to start somewhere, and the man sitting beside her, the one she had married and loved, was the only person she could turn to now. "I never wanted you to know," she whispered, her voice shaking. "I never wanted anyone to know about him, about the life I was living before I met you." Her husband's hand tightened around hers, his thumb gently stroking the back of her hand in a gesture that felt both comforting and heartbreaking. He didn't say anything, just waited for her to continue, his eyes soft but filled with an ache she could feel deep in her soul. She let out a shaky breath, trying to gather the strength to continue. The air between them felt thick, heavy with the weight of her secrets, and for the first time, she didn't know how to carry it. She had always been strong, always kept her emotions in check, but now, with her husband sitting beside her, everything seemed to unravel at once. She had thought that she could protect him from the past, but it was clear now that the past had caught up with them both. "My brother," she said, each word coming out with more difficulty than the last. "He wasn't just someone I lost. He wasn't just a missing piece of my life. He was the person who changed everything for me. He's the reason I became who I am now, the reason I buried everything deep down inside." Her husband's grip tightened, but his eyes were full of sorrow, not anger. He had no idea where this was leading, but he knew, somehow, that the truth was something that could no longer be hidden. "I grew up with him," she continued, her voice barely above a whisper, "and we were so close. Closer than anyone else in the world. We were inseparable. But then something happened. Something changed, and he became someone I didn't recognize. He disappeared, and I thought he was gone for good. I thought he was dead. But I was wrong. He was out there, living a life I could never have imagined. A life full of lies, violence, and crime." Her eyes blurred with tears as she tried to hold herself together. The emotions that had been buried for so long were bubbling to the surface, and there was no stopping them now. "And I didn't just lose him," she choked out, her voice raw with the weight of her confession. "I lost myself. I was left with nothing but the guilt of never knowing what happened to him. For years, I tried to move on, to build a life with you, to forget what I had lost. But I couldn't. I couldn't escape him, or the mistakes he made. And then, the truth came back. The photograph, the evidence, it was all part of a life he had built. A life that was tied to mine, whether I wanted it to be or not." Her husband's face twisted with confusion and pain as he tried to understand. He was struggling to piece together what she had just told him, and the silence that hung between them only made the tension more unbearable. "I kept it hidden from you," she continued, her voice faltering. Because I thought I could protect you. I thought that if I kept the truth buried, it would keep you safe. But it didn't. It never did. And now, the past is here. It's all come crashing down, and I don't know how to fix it. I don't know if I can. She buried her face in her hands, unable to look at him anymore. The shame, the guilt, the overwhelming flood of emotions. It was too much. She felt like she was drowning in it, as though the walls of the world were closing in on her, and there was nowhere left to turn. Her husband didn't speak at first. He just sat there, his hand still gently holding hers, the warmth of his touch grounding her in the midst of the storm. She could feel his eyes on her, but she couldn't bear to look at him, couldn't bear to see the disappointment she was sure to find there. But then, after what felt like an eternity of silence, he spoke, his voice low and steady. "I don't know what to say," he began, his words careful, as though he were treading on fragile ground. "I don't know how to make sense of everything you've just told me. But I do know this. I know that the woman I married, the woman I've shared my life with, is not defined by her past. We all have things we've done, things we wish we could change. And I can't pretend to understand what you've been through. But I do know one thing. I'm not going anywhere. Not now. Not ever." Her breath caught in her throat at his words. For a moment, she thought she might collapse, the weight of his kindness and forgiveness crashing into her all at once. How could he say that? How could he forgive her so easily when she had kept so much from him? "I don't know how we move forward from here," he continued, his voice thick with emotion. "But I do know that we'll do it together. Whatever it takes, whatever the cost. We'll face this, and we'll find a way to make it right." Tears streamed down her face now, not from guilt or regret, but from the overwhelming sense of relief that flooded her heart. He wasn't angry. He wasn't blaming her. He was standing beside her, offering her the one thing she had longed for more than anything, the chance to heal. She looked at him then, really looked at him, and for the first time in what felt like forever, she saw the man she had fallen in love with, the man who had never asked for anything, who had always been there for her, even when she hadn't deserved it. And in that moment, something inside her shifted. She didn't have all the answers, and she didn't know what the future held. But she knew one thing for certain: she wasn't alone anymore. The past, with all its darkness and pain, could no longer hold her captive. And no matter what lay ahead, she would face it with him by her side. Her hand squeezed his, her grip firm and sure, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, she allowed herself to feel something other than fear. She allowed herself to feel hope. "I love you," she whispered, her voice barely audible but full of meaning. "I'm so sorry, and I will do whatever it takes to make this right." Her husband's expression softened, and he leaned in, pressing his forehead gently against hers. "We'll figure it out," he said quietly. "Together." As the night air grew colder, they sat there, side by side, in the silence of the park, with only the sound of their breathing and the beating of their hearts to fill the space between them. The future was uncertain, but for the first time, it didn't feel like a burden. It felt like a new beginning. And for the first time, she allowed herself to believe that everything might just be okay. The night stretched out before them, as if the world itself had paused to listen to the fragile moment unfolding between the couple. The park, once a place of peace, now seemed to hold the weight of the secrets they had shared. The soft rustle of the trees, the distant hum of city life, all of it faded into the background as she sat there, her heart still reeling from the confession. Her mind was racing, too, tangled in a web of thoughts and emotions, but for the first time in what felt like forever, she wasn't afraid of the truth anymore. Her husband's hand was still holding hers, his warmth a constant reminder of the love they had built. But she could feel that their world had shifted, irrevocably altered by the past she had tried to bury. The truth was out, and she could feel the gravity of it. How could she go back to the life they had before? How could they pick up the pieces after everything had been shattered? "I don't deserve you," she whispered, the words escaping before she could stop them. Her husband's grip tightened slightly, a silent reminder that he was here, with her, through everything. He turned to face her fully, his expression intense yet filled with something she couldn't quite place, something that made her heart ache even more. "You don't get to decide what you deserve," he said softly, his voice steady despite the storm swirling around them. "What matters is that you're here right now, with me. And that means more than anything else." His words hit her like a wave. She had been drowning in guilt, in the weight of her own decisions, and he was pulling her back to the surface, offering her a lifeline when she had thought there was none left. But even as he spoke, a sense of dread hung in the air, as if the truth was only the beginning of something far bigger, far more dangerous than either of them could have anticipated. "I don't know if I can ever make up for this," she said, her voice cracking. "The lies, the secrets, all of it." Her husband shook his head slowly, his eyes searching hers. "I'm not asking you to. I'm asking you to be honest, to be real with me."
And you have.
That's all that matters. Tears welled up in her eyes again, but they weren't just from the rawness of her emotions. There was something else now, a shift, a recognition of the gravity of the path they were on. She knew, deep in her bones, that the truth had cracked open something far more dangerous than she had ever imagined. Her brother, her estranged brother, the fugitive who had been at the center of it all, had always been a shadow in her life, a figure whose presence she could never escape. But now, with the photograph revealed, with the past dragging itself into the present, she couldn't help but feel the pull of something darker. What if there were more to his story? What if the people he had crossed paths with, the dangerous circles he had run in, were now circling her, threatening everything she held dear? She looked at her husband, fear creeping into her heart. "There's more," she said quietly, almost to herself. "I can feel it. This isn't just about a photograph. It's about everything. The people he knew, the things he did. It's all coming back. And it's coming for me." Her husband's face hardened. "What do you mean? Why are you not telling me?" She shook her head, unable to fully explain the sense of impending danger she felt. It wasn't just the emotional weight of her past that haunted her. It was the knowledge that her brother's choices had bound her to something far more sinister. The underworld he had been part of, the criminals he had worked with, they were still out there. And now, they had a reason to come after her. "I don't know how to explain it," she said, her voice trembling with fear. "But I feel like I'm being watched. Like they know who I am now, what I've hidden. And I don't know how long it will take before they come for me, for us." The words hung in the air, heavy and ominous. Her husband looked at her, his face grim, the concern in his eyes deepening. "We need to be careful. We need to be prepared for whatever comes next." But even as he said the words, the weight of his own fear was evident. He couldn't protect her from everything. He couldn't protect them from the shadows of her past that were creeping closer every day. Just then, a distant sound broke through the stillness of the night. It was faint at first, like a whisper carried on the wind, but it grew louder, closer. Her heart skipped a beat. A car engine. The unmistakable hum of an engine that didn't belong in this quiet park. Her husband's eyes darted to the sound, then back to her. His expression darkened. "Stay here," he said, his voice low and urgent. "Stay hidden." Before she could respond, he was already standing, moving quickly toward the edge of the park, his gaze scanning the surroundings. Her heart pounded in her chest as she watched him, the fear building once again. She stayed where she was, unable to move, as the sound of the car drew nearer. It was no coincidence that it was here, not now. Not tonight. The car's headlights broke through the trees, casting long, sharp shadows across the ground. Her pulse quickened as the car slowed, stopping just a few feet away from where she sat. She couldn't see the driver clearly, but she didn't need to. She knew who it was. The door opened, and a figure stepped out, tall and imposing, casting a long shadow in the dim light. Her breath caught in her throat as the figure turned toward her. Her instincts screamed at her to run, but her legs felt frozen, anchored to the ground by fear and uncertainty. She heard her husband's voice, urgent, coming from the distance. "Get inside.
Now."
But it was too late. The figure began to walk toward her, slow and deliberate, as though savoring the moment. His presence was like a storm, a force that couldn't be ignored. And as he drew closer, she could see the coldness in his eyes, the hardness of a man who had seen too much, done too much. She stood up, backing away instinctively, but there was nowhere to go. The park was empty, the streets quiet. She was trapped. "I thought you'd forgotten about me," the man said, his voice a low rasp, almost a taunt. "But I see I was wrong." Her heart pounded in her chest as she tried to steady herself. This was the moment she had feared, the moment she had tried to avoid for so long. The past had found her. And it wasn't just her past, it was the past that was coming for everything she loved. The man took another step closer, his gaze never leaving hers. "I'm here for what's mine," he said, his words sharp, final. Her mind raced. She didn't know how much time she had left, but she knew she couldn't face him alone. She had to protect her husband, protect herself, and most importantly, protect the child she carried. And as she took one last look at the approaching figure, the world seemed to tilt, the ground beneath her feet unstable. Everything she had feared was coming true, and the battle for her future was just beginning. Her breath came in shallow gasps as the man's footsteps echoed in her mind, growing louder with each passing second. The fear, which had been simmering quietly beneath the surface, now surged through her veins like wildfire. She was no longer just afraid of the man in front of her. She was afraid of what this meant for everything she had built, everything she had fought to protect. Her mind spun, caught in the hurricane of emotions crashing against her. The baby, her husband, the truth that had come to light. And now, the past, her brother's deadly legacy, had caught up with her, dragging her into a nightmare she thought she had escaped. The figure stepped closer, his silhouette sharp against the dimming light of the park. Each step he took felt like it was pulling her deeper into the darkness of her own fears. He was the embodiment of everything she had tried to forget, the embodiment of the man who had once been her everything, and who had now become the nightmare she could never escape. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. What could she say? What could she do? She wasn't strong enough to fight him off. She wasn't strong enough to protect herself, let alone her husband and child. All the choices she had made, the lies she had told, the years she had spent hiding, had led her here, back to this terrifying moment. "Please," she whispered, her voice cracking as the tears she had fought so hard to hold back finally broke free. "Please leave us alone." The man paused for a moment, his eyes glinting in the faint light. There was something almost sinister in the way he looked at her, as if he was savoring the fear he had so carefully cultivated over the years. "You think I'm here to hurt you?" His voice was cold, like ice scraping against metal. "I'm not here to hurt you, sweetheart. I'm here for what's mine." Her heart skipped a beat.
What did he mean by that?
Her mind raced, trying to make sense of the cryptic words. But before she could process it further, the man took another step closer, his presence suffocating her. Her feet were glued to the ground, her body frozen in terror, as if the universe itself had stopped in that very moment. "You don't understand, do you?" he said, his lips curling into a smirk. "I don't care about you, about your family, about any of it. But your brother, he owed me. He owed me everything, and now you're the only one who can pay the price." His words hit her like a punch to the gut, and for the first time in years, she felt like the ground beneath her feet had been pulled away. Her brother had always been the center of her pain, the source of everything she had tried to bury, but now she realized just how deep his betrayal had run. This wasn't just about the life he had chosen. This was about debts that could never be repaid. "I'm not him," she said, her voice shaking. "I don't know what you want from me. Please, just leave us alone." But the man didn't listen. Instead, he took another step forward, and this time, her heart began to race with a new, terrible fear. This wasn't just about words anymore.
This wasn't just about the past.
This was about the present, the danger that was closing in on her and her family. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw her husband. He was standing at the edge of the park, watching, waiting, but there was no way he could make it in time. He was too far away. Too far to protect her from what was happening right now. The man's gaze flickered toward him for a moment, as if he had just noticed the husband's presence. His eyes narrowed, and she saw something cold and calculating behind them. He took another step toward her, his voice low and mocking. "You think you can hide behind him?" he asked, his words dripping with venom. "You think he can protect you? Your little family? He has no idea who he's dealing with." She wanted to scream, to shout at her husband to run, to get away, but the words caught in her throat. She couldn't do it. She couldn't risk it. If her husband ran, they would both be vulnerable. She couldn't put him in danger. She couldn't risk losing him too. For a moment, everything stood still. The world was a blur of fear and uncertainty, and her mind was a storm of emotions. But amid the chaos, one thought pierced through. She would not let this man destroy everything she held dear. She couldn't let him win. Her eyes darted around the park, looking for anything, any way to protect herself, to protect her family. Her gaze landed on the nearby bench, and in an instant, her mind locked onto the only thing she could do. She couldn't fight him head-on, not with her strength, but she could use the element of surprise. She could make him underestimate her, and in that brief moment of hesitation, she could find her way out. With a sudden movement, she broke free from the paralyzing fear that had gripped her. Without thinking, she turned, grabbing the heavy metal frame of the bench and using it to propel herself into a sprint. She ran, fast, desperate, and fueled by an instinct she didn't even know she had. The man's voice rang out, full of fury. "You can't escape me." But she didn't listen. She didn't have the luxury of hesitation anymore. Every step she took, every breath she inhaled, was a step toward her survival. She had made so many mistakes, so many wrong choices. But this was one thing she could control. She could get away. She could protect her family. Her footsteps echoed in her ears as she ran, the sound of her heart pounding in her chest. The park was no longer quiet. It was alive with the sound of her fear, the sound of her determination. The man's footsteps followed, growing louder, but she wouldn't stop. She couldn't stop. She turned a corner, her breath coming in ragged gasps as she pushed her body faster than it had ever moved. She could feel the man's presence behind her, could almost sense his anger and frustration. But she wasn't going to be his victim. She wasn't going to let him have her. The city loomed ahead, and she saw the lights of her neighborhood just beyond the trees.
She was almost there.
She just had to keep running. But then, in the distance, she saw something else. Something that made her blood run cold. A second car. This one was parked at the edge of the park, and its headlights flashed on, blinding her for a moment. She felt the hair on the back of her neck stand up as a cold chill washed over her. The danger wasn't just behind her anymore. It was everywhere. She had made a mistake. There was no way out. And then, as if in slow motion, everything clicked together. Her brother wasn't just a ghost from the past. He was the catalyst for a much bigger storm. A storm that was about to swallow them whole. The moment of terror, the fight for her survival, was just beginning. As the cold light of the second car flashed toward her, the weight of reality settled upon her shoulders. She had no escape. The world, once full of possibilities, now felt like a prison. There was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. The ghosts of her past, the ones she had hoped would stay buried, had come back to claim what was theirs. But she couldn't stop. Not now. She couldn't let them win. Not when everything she loved was at stake. Her breath came in ragged gasps as she stumbled, but her legs kept moving, driven by a raw, desperate need to survive. She could hear the footsteps behind her, but she dared not look. All she had was the sound of her heartbeat, pounding in her ears like a countdown to something inevitable. Every muscle in her body screamed with exhaustion, but she pushed forward, her eyes locked on the light ahead, her home, her family. It was only when she neared the edge of the park that she saw him. Her husband, standing in the distance, his figure strong and determined, but with a look of concern in his eyes. He was waiting for her, waiting to save her. She couldn't do it alone. Not anymore. She had to rely on him. She had to trust that together they could face this. In the instant her eyes met his, time seemed to freeze. Everything stopped. The cars, the shadows, the danger that loomed so close. All of it faded into the background. All that mattered was him, standing there, his arms outstretched as if he knew what was at stake, as if he knew the truth, that no matter what the world threw at them, they would survive together. She ran toward him, as fast as her legs would carry her, fueled by the thought of him, of their child, of the life they had built. She felt a surge of strength she didn't know she had, her fear now transforming into determination. But just as she reached the edge of the park, the man who had been chasing her caught up. The sound of his footsteps was almost deafening as he closed the gap, his voice rising in a fury. "You can't escape me," he shouted, his hand outstretched to grab her. But she didn't stop.
Not now.
Not when she was so close. She turned, with the last ounce of strength she could muster, and threw herself into her husband's arms. "Run," she cried, her voice a broken whisper. "We have to get out of here.
Now."
Without a word, her husband pulled her close and turned, grabbing her hand as they began to sprint together, leaving the man behind, the danger fading with every step. The city lights grew closer, their promise of safety and warmth a beacon in the distance. Her heart thundered in her chest, but this time it wasn't from fear. It was from hope, from love, from the belief that no matter how dark the night, no matter how deep the shadows, they could face anything, as long as they were together. The chase, the danger, the pain, it all faded as they ran, hand in hand, toward the life they had once feared losing. As they reached the safety of their home, the world outside seemed to quiet, the noise of their fears silenced by the walls they had built. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, she allowed herself to breathe. She let go of the weight that had clung to her for so long. The past had come for her, but she had survived. And she knew, with every fiber of her being, that nothing would break them. Not now. Not ever. They stood together in the doorway, looking out at the life they had almost lost. The future was uncertain, yes. But together, they were unstoppable. As she looked at her husband, the love of her life, she whispered, "We'll make it through this. Together." And as the sun began to rise, casting light on their future, she knew that the storm had passed for now. But the journey, their journey, was just beginning. If you enjoyed this gripping tale of love, secrets, and survival, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more unforgettable stories. Your support means the world, and you won't want to miss what's coming next. Subscribe now and stay tuned for more heart-touching, suspense-filled episodes. Thank you for being part of this journey. Stay with us, and let's create more memories together. Don't forget to like and share if you've been moved by the story. And remember, no matter the storm, we always find a way through it. Subscribe now, and let's keep exploring the depths of life's most emotional, powerful stories.